Warframe's new 1999 update brought possibly one of the most insane new helmets into the game in the form of Site09's Evade ability. This ability is able to grant any frame in the game the option of invisibility, fixing the survivability of some very squishy frames, in particular Banshee. This video will give 2 examples of abusing the Evade ability on 2 frames that used to have some issues with staying alive, that being Harrow and Banshee. Both of these frames can output incredible damage but often lack the easy playability that other frames would offer. However, Evade completely changes this. First, let's have a look at Banshee. Banshee is one of the hardest hitting frames in the game due to her second ability Sonar, which is able to multiplicatively increase damage done to the weak spots that it spawns. These weak spots use old game code and do not function the same as Site's weak spots, nor are they able to trigger mods, arcanes, and the Evade ability that mention hitting these weak spots. Most of the mods that have this wording actually refer to you scoring headshots. In the future, this may possibly be changed, and I do hope this happens, as it's way too confusing as of making this video. Anyhow, Sonar's weak spots can spawn on different enemy body parts, including the arms, the legs, the torso, and the head. If a weak spot appears anywhere on this body part, the entire body part will count as a weak spot. This means that in some cases you can benefit from both the headshot multiplier and Sonar's damage multiplication if a weak spot spawns on the head of an enemy. Using multiple Banshees in a squad will result in overlapping Sonar weak spots, which are multiplicative to each other, combining into a single massive multiplier. As an example, 2 Banshees with a Sonar modded for times 15 damage will result in a times 300 damage on weak spots. This casually enables hitting damage cap with practically any weapon in the game. However, if you are playing solo, you can still achieve the same effect, albeit less reliably, with Banshee's augment, Resonance. Resonance will spawn a second Sonar, which counts as an additional weak spot which can overlap. This can trigger when enemies are killed by hitting weak spots with a cooldown of 5 seconds. So yes, Banshee was already able to deal some insane damage, but now with the introduction of Evade, we can turn her into an absolute damage dealing machine. Furthermore, Banshee, with the help of Evade, in combination with her ability Silence, also turns her into a stealth goddess. This is because Silence will nullify all enemy abilities from Eximus units, but also from Acolytes, which means you can now play the ultimate Uno reverse card on Violence. The final Banshee build that I settled with all of these new changes and the introduction of Evade, will look like this, where I try to strike a balance between strength and duration while keeping efficiency and range at 100%. I use the new Arcane Crepuscular, as we will be invisible with Evade, which will give us an additional 30% ability strength and a 3 times final crit multiplier. You can then choose any other arcane which works best for your build. I personally went with the increased duration, which I can get from Molt efficiency. I put Evade over Banshee's 4th ability, as her 1 is still somewhat useful for crowd control when needed, and the augment Sonic Fracture on her 1 is able to strip enemy armor, which is what I'd recommend you use for the cheap version of the build if you don't have access to Emerald Archon shards yet. Speaking about the Archon shards, I use 3 strength shards, 1 casting speed shard, and 1 shard for additional corrosive stacks. Now let's discuss how we can optimize our uptime on Evade. But before I do that, I want to see if I can optimize the ratio of people that watch these videos but are not yet subscribed. If you like the content I make and want to help me out, don't evade those subscribe and like buttons, but rather headshot them. Now let's get back to it. There's one essential thing that you need to know about Evade when you are using it as a subsume ability. Even though it says it's able to be triggered by hitting weak spots, this is actually only affected whenever you score a headshot. This also means, as I said before, that Banshee's weak spots from her Sonar ability will not be able to trigger Evade. Now, the easiest way of keeping up a subsumed Evade ability is using the Scourge Spear Gun, which you can throw on the ground, after which it will spawn bubbles around enemy heads that attract bullets and will convert these bullets into headshots. The best Scourge build focuses on reload speed only and some fire rate to throw around as many spears as possible. Combining this with the dual Toxocyst Incarnon makes it incredibly easy to keep up your evade timer, as you can just shoot in the general direction of enemies and immediately add to your counter. Furthermore, ricochet bullets from the Incarnon form of the dual Toxocyst are also able to hit weak spots from Banshee, but they will also score headshots, providing an even further synergistic effect. If you do not like using the Scourge, I can recommend using the Kunai Incarnon, which goes insanely hard with Banshee's weak spots. The Kunai Incarnon has auto-aim towards enemy heads, which gives you the same quality of life as the Scourge without sacrificing the primary weapon slot. However, since the Kunai has multiplicative condition overload scaling in its Incarnon, Incarnon form, it is recommended to at least prime for a couple of elements. For this, the primary slot for me is filled by using the Bubonico with the new primary Crux Arcane, as this can greatly increase the status chance. Furthermore, the Bubonico's alternate fire is an AoE which helps prime entire groups of enemies in just a couple of seconds. For the Kunai Incarnon build itself, I tried two variants, with the first one using the new pistol Acuity, which is able to hit insanely high damage. However, since the multi-shot is locked, this was way more useful for single target damage in missions like Disruption, where I could easily insta-kill a Demolist with a single Kunai. On the Kunai, I go for the following Incarnon perks. First, I choose Swift Conclusion, then I take Swift Deliverance, and finally I take Death Trap Trigger. In the Acuity build, crit chance from Acuity is additive to other crit chance mods, with this being the formula. Now, if you are not using a Riven and you use the Banshee build together with the Kunai build that I suggested before, your final crit chance will be about 638%. However, if you do get a Riven, which I would highly recommend because the disposition on the Kunai Incarnon is actually really high, you are able to go up to a crazy 763 final crit chance. Apart from the Acuity build, I could also recommend a second build variant of the Kunai, which focuses more on multi-shot. This feels way better when you are using the Kunai in a more hectic mission, where KPM is more important, like Survival or Void Cascade. You can use Galvanized Diffusion and Lethal Torrent for multi-shot, which will also help you speed up building the Incarnon charge. Besides these options, there's also a way to proc headshots with electricity or gas status effects, as these statuses can hit enemy body parts, including heads. For this, I tried using a melee influence gas and electric build, which was absolutely wiping the floor with Tech Rod, as their weak spots, which are the TVs, are spread across their limbs, which can easily be hit by melee attacks, often causing me to hit damage cap gas procs, which would then leave gas clouds killing anything that walks into it. So if you want to farm some Tech Rod, I would highly advise this Banshee build, where I also included Arcane Strike, together with this Inadem build for high range and Tennokai heavy attacks. However, against other factions, this seemed to work a lot less reliably, since getting headshots on these factions with a melee weapon is nearly impossible. So take this into consideration when you want to use a melee approach. Now let's have a look at another frame which greatly benefits from the use of Evade, which is Harrow. Here we'll be able to fully abuse the way that Acuity mods are currently multiplicative on some guns, which funnily enough are the same guns as the ones affected by multiplicative crit from Biting Frost, which I have covered in a recent video. On Harrow we are able to synergize his kit amazingly well with Evade, as his fourth ability Covenant gives plus 200% crit chance on headshots, which is a flat additive and is able to be multiplied by the Acuity mod, as I've mentioned before, making it 4.5 times more effective. Furthermore, his energy regen ability Thurible gives additional energy regen on headshots, meaning that you will never have to struggle for energy. However, as with Banshee, keeping up headshots in high intensity missions like Cascade is the biggest downside of the build, again limiting you to either the Kunai Incarnon or using the Scourge. But on Harrow you may also consider using the Laetum, as this weapon has multiplicative crit and multiplicative condition overload in Incarnon form, which combined with Harrow and a Scourge will skyrocket your damage all the way to Lua. In missions like Disruption, you can absolutely obliterate enemies using the Stahlta, as this weapon has multiplicative crit and multiplicative condition overload, just like the Laetum, but this time in both the base fire and alternate fire modes. To benefit massively from the multiplicative condition overload, you can use the new mod Spectral Serration, which will give you a 330% damage increase when invisible. Combine this with a compressor that has secondary encumber on it, high status chance, and multi-shot, and you can enjoy sending some Demolists to the Shadow Realm. Using the Stahlta on Harrow feels great because his second ability Penance increases both the fire rate and reload speed, greatly improving the feel of this gun. Besides this, just like Banshee, Harrow is insane in killing Tech Rod with the Inadem, as his second ability does not only provide fire rate, but also attack speed. For my Harrow build, I fully invest into strength and duration to increase the uptime on Evade and the fire rate and reload speed buffs that I can get from Penance. And I use Arcane Crepuscular again, as the crit damage increase synergizes amazingly well with Harrow. Key to this build is using Harrow's augment mod Lasting Covenant, which, just like Evade, will extend its duration on headshots. The way you use this optimally is by activating Covenant before activating your Evade ability, enabling you to stack damage received for full crit chance buffs. Then, afterwards, you activate your Evade ability and become a stealthy red crit wizard. In the end, choosing Banshee or Harrow doesn't really matter, as both will give you a jolly good time when synergizing their kits with Evade. If you like seeing massive damage numbers, go with Banshee, and if you like to boost your crits to infinity, Harrow is your pick. Besides Harrow and Banshee, you can also use frames like Mirage and Chroma, which are also known to have some survivability issues, especially towards late game. However, both of these frames are also insane damage dealers, which you can then further amplify by making them invisible and using things like the stealth damage multiplier and arcane crepusculant. Be aware that using these builds in solo play could feel a lot better, as enemies will be showing way less erratic movements and will often be standing still as well, creating possibilities for scoring easy headshots. I hope that you all have fun with the builds and that you also enjoyed your Christmas time with your loved ones and friends, if you do celebrate it. As always, I want to thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye. As always, thanks to all channel members for supporting the channel. If you are looking to become a member, please find the join button below the video.